Show me the thing! Welcome back to the second episode of Featured Fan Builds. I'm your host, Captain Xavier, and we're going to be looking at blasters that have been built by people who inexplicably watch my channel, and I wanted to see what kind of stuff they had been building, so I asked them to submit stuff, and this is the first episode of all the ones that are, pictures and stuff that they sent. So, we are going to start with some physical ones that I have, because there are a couple that I missed, and I think I actually picked up this one since then. So, in a previous fan mail episode, somebody had sent me this clear Maverick that they had painted orange, in kind of a, supposed to be a translucent orange, but it's very cloudy, as you can see. Well, he perfected the process and can now make them shiny and clear. It is so much prettier. You can see all the internals. And it's a much subtler orange. He found the right paint to do it. And so he gave me an upgraded one. So this one will be replacing this one on my Maverick collection. And I will have all the links to him down in the description. For the life of me, I can't remember his name, but I will find out what it is and make it pop up here so that I am slightly less of a schmuck than I actually am. But I absolutely love how this one came out, and I really want to run it in a war just for the sheer absurdity of it. Or perhaps some HVZ. I will use this eventually. Anyway, let's get on to the submitted stuff. So this first blaster that we're going to be looking at, just on the pictures, was sent to me by Funk. And it was actually his idea for me to start this series. He sent me an email with a bunch of ideas, including this one, and I really, really like this idea. And fortunately, he did in fact provide me with one of the first ones that I'm going to be using. So let's take a look at what we have here. This is the message that he sent. This is my full auto Strife inspired by YouTube moderate skills and done with Lego parts and some 3D printing. It comes with external battery compartment, can be disassembled easily into its individual components. The shell is made from an old plastic table leg, and the Strife kept in place via a simple spring-powered thing locking the blaster in place while pressing on the inside of the new shell at the same time. Buttstock is made out of pool noodle and a cheap orange handbag I found at the equivalent of your Goodwill. The idea was to make a sci-fi-esque used-looking blaster that I can use in almost any foam-related global zombie conflict, ranging from 4 AA to 6 AA, mild increased performance, up to 3 IMR. Good enough for me. I can adapt to the max FPS and given rules set at games easily. The orange tip to match further regulations can easily be made visible by removing the small muzzle brake at the front of the barrel. I'm 41, playing Nerf for 3 years, meanwhile, and organizing events in the south of Germany. Check out blasterparx.de. Best regards, Funk. So I actually really like this blaster in general. Finding out how it actually works, it makes it even cooler. I love that it's made using Lego, as well as 3D printed parts. I love the use of unusual things. You wouldn't usually think to use a plastic table leg for a body like this, but I really like how it looks, and it does have a very distinct futuristic, post-apocalyptic kind of look. I also really like the idea of having the external battery tray like this, kind of like you have on, most Nerf blasters, an easily accessed battery tray, but he made it large enough that he can put in a variety of different battery configurations, and that's really, really clever. I also do like that while he did make it look fairly realistic for, the more private location LARPs, even some of those require, at least to have an orange tip, so he made it so that he can easily access the orange tip. So just all around, I really like the look of this. I like the very blocky look. I like that it's very, Spartan or, militaristic with only functionality in mind as opposed to really fancy designs and all that. So I really like this, and I appreciate him sending me these pictures. So check out the blasterparx.de. The link will be in the description. There'll be a lot of links in the description. And let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have some blasters made by Sandwing. And what we're looking at here is obviously a rapid strike with a rough cut master key and a Centurion stock integrated in. It then has a sand paint job, and as well as some black. And the basic modifications, it's had all of its locks removed, but it is still running the stock wiring, but it's running off a 7.2 nickel metal hydride battery. He then has some sidearms. He's got, I believe, a pair of hammer shots, which have had their ARs removed and their dart pegs removed. He did then create a spring spacer to give a little bit of pre-compression using the plunger tube from a long shot front gun. I thought that was a really creative option for that. But what I think is really neat is the storyline behind them. The backstory of this is that there was apparently a war between dragons and humans. The humans wanted to exterminate the dragons in order to take their land, and of course the dragons fought back and a war broke out. And Sandwing apparently felt that this was wrong, and so he joined the dragons' side and built this blaster out of various other, several blasters all combined together. And so I think it's very fitting that it has a somewhat unfinished look. It's not fully painted. You can see the integration marks because it's meant to be something that was not like a manufactured standard issue weapon as provided to the military, but more something that was cobbled together from stuff in the field. And so it definitely has that feel about it. And I like the dragon logo that he's got painted on the magazine and the back of on the stock there. And I think it's really neat. I like the extra details he added in with parts of the Centurion to give it a little bit more plating and to cover up some of the integration stuff. I think it looks really, really nice. So let's move on to the next one. Up next we have an absolutely beautifully painted Kronos by Hayden Holliday. Here's what he had to say about it. This is my favorite custom paint job from my arsenal, so I figured I'd submit it for the fan feature build segment you mentioned. It's a repainted Kronos, but is otherwise bone stock. The weathering on the red portion, my favorite trick, was accomplished by basically just dry brushing it with black before silver to give the illusion of the paint wearing off. The only history I've created for it is that I always imagine it being the personal sidearm of a sci-fi drill sergeant who compensates for his small stature with a horribly oversized pistol, which I think is a fantastic backstory. I really like this paint job. I don't know if it's just the lighting, but it looks like it's red and green. It looks like it would be, something that Boba Fett might carry. It kind of matches his armor. But that, like I said, it might actually be a darker gray or more of a black just based on the lighting. But the weathering is really, really well done, and I really, really like that. So, yeah, well done, Hayden. Let's see what we've got next. Up next we have what can only be described as a Nerf lantern shield. And if you're not familiar with what a lantern shield is, this is a lantern shield. It's one of the most ridiculous and ostentatious weapons from the medieval or Renaissance era. It is, as you can see, a small buckler with a gauntlet built into it. It's got a spike coming out of the center of the buckler. It has sword-breaking spikes built into the knuckles on the gauntlet. It has a full sword blade attached to it. They often would also have a lantern, thus the name Lantern Shield. They also sometimes even had guns built into them. And they are absolutely absurd, and were generally not actually used for war or combat. They were used as a deterrent. You saw somebody walking down the street with this, and you're very unlikely to get into a fight because he could accidentally kill you, much less if he's trying to kill you. So this was created by Lightning Eagle 14, and he got some. He reached out to me for suggestions, and I gave him, my thoughts on how to do this, and he took them and he implemented it perfectly. I feel he took a pair of the Dart Zone pistols, which are excellent pistols by anybody's standards, attached them handle to handle, and then bolted them onto a large sheet of polycarbonate that he cut out into a circle. He then attached a Zombie Strike sword to it, and then added a strap to further secure it onto his arm. So he has a shield that he can see through, that he can also shoot with. Now, he says that you can't really melee with it, despite the fact that it has the sword on it, because the edge of the shield is a little bit too dangerous. And he's right, and I approve of his decision to not melee with it. Though I can think of a couple of ways you could make it safe. You just need to edge the shield in something. When I did Medieval Recreation, most of them they used pipe insulation, but that's a little bit thick and bulky. We then eventually trimmed it down to where we were just using black soak hose, which was soft enough that you didn't have to worry about hurting somebody as much. You still wouldn't want to, fall off and hit somebody with it. But it would make it at least safe enough that you could probably use that sword without too much worry, as long as you were fairly careful not to clock them with the shield portion of it. He said he didn't get a whole lot of tags with it when he took it, but a lot of other people at the event that he took it to used it and just absolutely loved it, and everybody had a blast. And I've considered making a shield similar to this, though a little bit, I was planning to use a little bit more powerful of a blaster, and my excuse to be able to justify that was I would build it the way he did it, where the blasters are in line with the shield, which means you can't really shoot the blasters and protect yourself at the same time. So you don't have, it would be a bit of too much of an advantage if you could actually shoot through the shield. I know I made my barrel-attached shield, but that was largely as satire. I've never actually tried to wield it because it would be very awkward and ungainly. But with something like this, since the only way you can shoot the blaster is to expose yourself, it balances out what would otherwise be a somewhat unfair advantage. And I really like that idea, and I kind of want to give it a try. So stay tuned to see what I come up with for that. But well done, Lightning Eagle. I like this one. Let's move on. Up next we have a build by 100GS Army, and this is what he has to say about it. This is the Black Sky. It is a rapid strike inside a Vulcan front end and has a deploy stock and a pump grip that is permanently in place. It has 3 rhinos, 2 micro switches, and I use it in Charleston Nerf Life Club war games such as our Bucket Wars or Free For All. I have no idea what Bucket Wars are. I can figure out what a Free For All is, but I'm curious what Bucket Wars is. Let me know. Put down in the description what that is. We might start playing it at our wars. And you guys could try Titan Ball, just so we can spread our different game types around. So the first picture here is, of course, obviously in progress, and there were some changes later on. He changed the front end, and he took off the front foregrip because obviously being low like that was kind of silly. So here it is with the paint job started, and he switched to a deploy pump grip rather than the foregrip, which I definitely think looks much more comfortable. And the paint job is just gorgeous. I love that tiger stripe faded in. I'd love to see this done in shades of black and orange, of course, being me. And then here it is finally completed. And I think it absolutely gorgeous. My first thought when I saw the picture was, does it use the belt? And no, it takes just a magazine. It's all cosmetic. But it gives such a huge and beautifully bulky kind of plasma rifle, massive, futuristic, heavy blaster look that I really like it. And like I said, that paint job is magnificent. So there you have it. And once again, let me know what Bucket Wars is, because I'm curious. Let's take a look at the next one. Up next, we have a build by Drew Benson, and this is what he has to say about it. This is one of my creations. Crossbolt strife integration, rewire, eclipse cage and wheels, 3S lipo with Wolverines, skull and flower hydro dip, cast parts, and a few 3D printed parts. It also has LEDs that blink on trigger pull. These are run off the stock battery tray while the lipo is in the Crossbolt magwell. This hits between 160 and 195 normally with a high of 203. Waiting on replacement wheels to come out, which should bring the FPS down but save all that dart wear and tear. It's my favorite build so far. Thank you for your time. Keep up the amazing videos. I'm 36 and have kids, and it's nice to share my hobby with them, and your channel makes that possible. Well, I am very glad to see that. Now, just look at this thing. That paint job is gorgeous. And the cast parts are also just beautiful. And the performance, obviously, you can't argue with that. I've said many, many times that I am not a fan of the Straven for lots of reasons, but I do like the Strife Bolt as an alternative. You still get the functionality of having a stock that holds a magazine, or in this case, a stock that holds your battery, without having to destroy a Raven to do it. And the paint job on this is gorgeous, and I like the clear parts that he has in there, obviously for the lighting up, which, given that I believe this is, he didn't mention it being full auto, so I assume it's semi-auto still, and so you could easily have a button on the trigger pull so that it flashes, which is just a really cool idea. I've been considering adding muzzle flash to IRE, since it turns out the ammo counter I have already has a circuit built in for controlling an LED. I just need to get around to doing it. But I mean, he's got all the best added parts. He's got the flared magwell, the angled foregrip. He went with the clear wheel cover. I've never been a huge fan of that kind of a thing, but it's just so beautifully executed here. And with the LEDs, of course, it makes a lot more sense because it would light up nicely. So everything about this is just a gorgeous, gorgeous build. Very well done, sir. Up next, we have a really simple one done by Buckshot Confederate. And it is a double strike that's been painted, and then he used a soldering iron to melt holes in the handle to give that weird green dot effect that you see, and he refers to it as the infection grip. And I imagine it would actually create a fairly comfortable grip, honestly, or at least a good solid grip. And the look of it does very much look like you have some sort of horrible infection. And so, you know, being a zombie strike blaster, that's very, very fitting. And I actually really like how it looks. I may have to do something similar to that on something just for fun, because I do so much HVZ stuff. It'd be a neat little thing to have on my own little handle. So, well done with that Buckshot Confederate. Our final fan feature for today comes to us from Denmark, a Jacob Sorenson. And here's what he has to say. First my loadout, and then my story. I know all my gear is very realistic and should not be used in public spaces. It was all designed for use in both LARP and indoor stuff, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So, looking at his gear for the head, it's obviously not shown in this picture, but he has just a plain black baseball cap and then 3M safety glasses. For the torso, he has an off-brand plate carrier, and then blaster parts, magazine pouches, and a Blaster Smith Fire Strike holster. I need to get my hands on one of those. For the legs, he has a Miltech dump pouch, a Miltech Molly leg panel with Devil Z magazine holders. I love those things. And blaster parts multi-holster, and I need to get my hands on a pair of those as well. Now let's take a look at the blasters. Starting out with his Rapid Strike, it has stock motors. He's removed most of the electrical and mechanical locks. It's running 2 lithium-ion 3.7 volt batteries and 2 dummies, no-name red dot, an extended mag release, handle extension, and additional sling mount on the side. His rough cut, which he doesn't use, apparently only one of these cylinders is catching for some reason, has had the handle removed, and then it's got a slamfire kit in it, so it obviously, is meant to be a master key, but it's currently non-functional. He has an Elite Alpha Trooper, which I highly approve of. It has stock internals, but then a worker buffer tube and worker stock. He has a long strike with the blaster parts 7 kg spring and the AR removed. He uses a strong arm with the stock spring and AR removed, and a fire strike, 2 extra for lending out, with stock spring and the AR removed. So a fairly stock arsenal for the most part. A little bit of modifications here and there, but nothing, that we would consider terribly competitive in our, style of Nerf wars. But that's because he's not doing it at competitive style Nerf wars, and I approve of his limiting of the power when you hear his actual story. So let's get to his story. So let's take a look at his story. I'm 25 years old and live in Denmark. I started with Nerf because I was lured to a LARP that was set in the Firefly universe. Since I've always liked snipers, it was only natural that I made a sniper character. That's when I got the long strike, painted it, and put a more powerful spring in it. The AR was removed recently. Needless to say, I was not particularly effective when the crew boarded hostile ships, but it looked cool, and that's what's the important thing. In a LARP, it really is. When the next scenario was announced, I was going to make a more aggressive and useful pointman character, hence the plate carrier and the big gun with the underslung shotgun. But the LARP got cancelled, and I never got to play that role as a pointman. So I put all my Nerf gear back in a box and forgot about Nerf and LARP for a time. But then, one day, I heard of a little sports club that was playing Nerf Wars on Sundays at a large indoor CQB-like field. I found my guns and gear and attended the war alone without my normal LARP friends. When I arrived and got dressed in my gear and walked around to look at the CQB field, which had been constructed using wood frames and tarp, take a look at this playfield. I want one of these so bad. All the kids mourned and glared at my gear and my guns that were painted and looked like real guns, and they just loved it, and they all wanted me on their team. Since then, I have attended all the wars, and I am now helped with setup the field every time now, and I just love it. I've also included some pictures of the field from the last game we played. This battlefield it's such a simple design, and you could indeed turn any area into your own close quarters thing. And this is why I said I really appreciated that he hadn't gone to modded all of his blasters absolutely to the max, because playing with little kids in a field like that, it's going to be huge amounts of point blank range play, and having even just slightly above stock blasters is all you would ever really need in an area like this, because you're never going to really be able to use a long-range blaster except if you line things up. And having the more stock blasters to use with kids and something like this, I really appreciate that. So, well done, Jacob. The gear looks gorgeous. And I'm glad that you do use it indoors at private locations, because, as you say, it looks very real. And so it's a good idea. So, yeah, let's recap. All right, well, there you have it. An absolutely fantastic collection of stuff that fans have submitted. Some really cool stuff in there. Even some, there's stuff in there that I'm going to have to do that, or I'm going to have to get that. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope those of you who submitted stuff, I hope I did your stuff justice and you're pleased with that. If you have submitted stuff and you didn't get featured, don't worry. I do still have it all. It's just I can only make these episodes so long. So I have about enough currently for one more episode, so then I will need more. So feel free to continue submitting your builds. Send lots of pictures so that I can do a slideshow of them in different angles and stuff like that. And if you have videos online on YouTube or whatever, let me know, and I will link them in the description or in the video so that people can see them in action. Because a couple of people did have video, so that is pretty cool. And I look forward to seeing what you guys submit in the future, because I love seeing what you guys have put together. And thank you guys for watching.